Welcome to the Stikker Podcast with your hosts, Nikki and Steven. The Stikker Podcast starts now.
Yo! What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Stikker Podcast. I hope everyone is doing awesome out there today. I think we've got a fun one to discuss today. Let's talk about some shows that are awesome and that I believe are underrated, and specifically shows that we've reacted to that I believe are underrated. I do have a little off-topic, off-scripted little topic that I want to discuss because it's been in my head. I don't know, it's been in my head for a long time, and I had a really good conversation with one of my best friends. He also trying to really build something. He's built something really dope. He's got like the best NFL meme account that there is on Instagram. Go follow Not Joe Flacco. He is super dope. You could tell him Steve-O sent you. And yeah, he's podcasting and he's doing all kinds of stuff, and he's built an incredible following. And we had a really good conversation the other day because, you know, trying to build things, trying to, you know, create content and stuff like that. And he made a comment about me that I already knew about myself, but hearing somebody who knows me best, it really landed and really hit, and like in a really good positive way, because it's important to hear some stuff from other people, even though you feel like you're doing something and then hearing it. I'm not a risk taker. I've never really been a risk taker. Even when I had the ability to take risks, I never really took a lot of risks in terms of taking chances with kind of doing my own thing in terms of work and stuff. And I thought it was really interesting because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who kind of struggle with the same thing. I've got so many ideas, and doing the podcast, I feel like that's a really good step. This is the third attempt at this, and I keep trying to do it because, one, I really enjoy doing this, and two, I feel like it's really something that could just, I don't know, it's a really fun thing to have, and people love audio and I love talking, and I feel like I've got all kinds of ideas for the podcast. I want to do interviews. I've done lots of interviews in my career. That was kind of part of my main career when I was working at Fox doing UFC content. I was doing a lot of interviews, and I love talking to folks, and I love talking about things, and I think this will evolve into that at some point. I just got to get it organized and get it scripted. But my struggle has always been taking an idea that I like, that I think is good, and actually executing it. Taking it off a piece of paper and actually getting it done. I don't know necessarily the reasons why I struggle with that. I don't know if... I don't know. It's just one of those things where, I'm not really in a position now to take a lot of risk. The risk should have happened years ago, and if you have ideas, and if this message strikes anybody, that's really the point. If you've got ideas and you've got goals, and set your goals high. My goals are probably unreachable it's kind of the intent. I set goals that are super, super high and lofty, and because it's the journey to trying to reach goals is massive, and it's part of just the greatness when you actually get to succeed something. If you set low goals and you hit every goal that you try to succeed, I don't know. It's just something about setting really big, like reach for the stars, as they say. Kind of one of those cheesy kind of statements. Just reach for the stars. Set goals that might be unattainable, and then it'll push you harder to try to attain those goals. But if there's anyone out there who's got goals and have plans, just start as early as you can. Because, obviously now with kids and all kinds of other responsibilities, it's a lot more risky to take risks on doing certain things. But yeah, here we are doing the podcast, and I do have a ton of ideas, and yeah, I kind of do struggle sometimes with pulling the trigger on stuff because I don't know, I really can't put my finger on it. It's just a matter of there's something missing where I've got a cool idea, I want to try to implement it, and then it just doesn't happen. But that was kind of a tangent that I've had on the top of my head. I think part of the reason, which I think is really interesting, I scroll through TikTok now. Thank you, Nikki, for getting me into TikTok. But there's this thing that I heard that I was scrolling through, and Denzel is absolutely amazing, and I guess he was doing a speech at a university, which would make sense because graduating college is probably the good age to really start taking those risks if you've got the ability to do so. But I heard this clip, and it really, 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 really resonated and hit me really hard, and I want to share it with you guys.
I'll say it again. If you don't fail, you're not even trying. My wife told me this great expression. To get something you never had, you have to do something you never did. Les Brown's a motivational speaker. He made an analogy about this. He says, imagine you're on your deathbed, and standing around your deathbed are the ghosts representing your unfulfilled potential. The ghost of the ideas you never acted on. The ghost of the talents you didn't use. And they're standing around your bed, angry, disappointed, and upset. They say, we came to you because you could have brought us to life, they say. And now we have to go to the grave together.
That's
so
deep,
I ask
man.
you today, how many ghosts are going to be around your bed when your time comes?
Yeah, that's powerful shit, I feel like. And that's a really, really good message. And, I mean, if that could strike anyone motivating to go do something big and go get their stuff done, that's amazing. Because, you know, I've struggled with that. But yeah, I saw that, I scrolled through that. It felt like the timing was perfect because it was literally days after me and my buddy had our conversation about stuff. And it's just like, fuck, dude. There could be a bunch of ghosts sitting by my side all pissed off at me, huh? But anyways, try not to regret things. It's always better to say that you tried it than to say that, oh, well, I didn't try it. But that was my long, kind of unscripted, unplanned rant because it was in my head and, you know, I've got the space to you know, talk about it on a podcast. It's kind of the fun thing about this. But like I said, I think we've got a really fun one. We're going to talk about shows that I believe are underrated. And also, of course, going to have a little Star Wars segment at the very end, something that I made a little while back that's going to kind of talk about an expectation for a piece of content that I am most looking forward to, the Kenobi series. But first off, let's jump into these shows because it's a really interesting conversation talking about shows or anything, any type of piece of content that could be potentially underrated, overrated. It really just boils down to opinions, which I always find to be really interesting because how do you determine if something is underrated or overrated? And, you know, it's, again, very difficult thing, but I'm going to use our reaction channel as the scale of kind of determining what could be considered underrated or overrated. I have 4 shows here, and all 4 of them I think you need to go watch immediately if you haven't, because they're all incredible, they're all spectacular, and, you know, going through the channel, I'm kind of basing it off of the engagement that each show and episode kind of had compared to other things. Obviously, we've done a lot of really big, very popular shows, Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, mostly to name those 2. But a lot of shows have done really, really well in terms of engagement and stuff like that. Vikings has done well. Cobra Kai does really well. But gonna use that as kind of the scale because, you know, I don't really have any other way of determining if something is really underrated because it's a difficult thing. Because, again, it's based off... You might not like one of these shows and be like, that show sucks. It's overrated. So it's a very difficult thing. But based off of the kind of the analytics, and everything is based off analytics these days... that's how I kind of determined which shows are underrated. And of course, I think they're all spectacular. And one thing that all of these shows have in common is that they're very unique. They all have a very specific thing that makes them unique and what kind of, in my opinion, separates them from other shows. And they, honestly, I don't feel like they get the attention that they deserve. They're not part of the conversation like I feel like they should be. And every one of these shows has incredible stories and characters, and just, again, each one of these has something very unique, which I'm going to hit on. And the first show, I'm going to kind of do this in order from like least underrated to most underrated. And I'm going to start with Better Call Saul because after going through the numbers and checking out everything, they're a lot better than I remembered them to be when we kind of were in the moment doing Better Call Saul. But I still don't feel like this show necessarily gets the attention that it deserves, but maybe it is getting a little bit more traction going into its final season. If you've never seen Better Call Saul and have seen Breaking Bad, you gotta go watch it right now. You have to. And if you haven't seen Breaking Bad, go watch Breaking Bad, then go watch Better Call Saul. 2 of the greatest shows, without question, that I personally have ever seen in my entire life. I'm on record saying that Breaking Bad is probably the best show I have ever seen. And, you know, Game of Thrones is my favorite, but Breaking Bad is the best show I have ever seen. And, you know, there's no question that Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul are getting close to being on the same level. I feel like Better Call Saul deserves to be in that discussion, and I really believe that if Better Call Saul continues its trajectory, because it's a show just like Breaking Bad that continues to do this every single episode. It gets better and better and better and better. It belongs to be in that conversation, and if it ends on a high note like Breaking Bad did, which I fully expect, I think it might be my favorite show of all time. Or not favorite show, but I think it'll be the best show of all time that I've ever seen, and we'll kind of talk about that here in a minute. It's interesting, though, when we finished Breaking Bad, and everyone was like, oh, you got to go watch Better Call Saul now, you got to go watch Better Call Saul, it wasn't something that I was really excited about, to be honest. You know, Saul Goodman as a character in Breaking Bad, I didn't really think that much of him. I thought he was actually kind of annoying. I didn't think a lot. I was like, an entire show about Saul? Like, I don't know about that, and I couldn't have been any more wrong about that situation. It is so much bigger. It is so much deeper of a story than just something about Saul. Yes, it hits on him a lot. And again, these conversations, I'm not going to be too spoiler. I'm going to be very general with the conversation. Probably should have mentioned that off the top. I'm not going to give away details about the show or characters or what happens. I'm going to be very general in terms of what I'm discussing here. But I was wrong about not expecting it to be a good show because of Saul, because again, it is just so much deeper than that. And again, I really do believe if this show ends on a high note, just like Breaking Bad did, it will be a show that 100% deserves to be in the discussion of best show of all time. The fact that Better Call Saul is a prequel makes it even more amazing. I mean, somehow the writing, the acting, the music, just everything about the way this show is produced just makes the stress and the tenseness just through the absolute roof, and it makes for such an amazing story and such a great watch. The characters are one of the main reasons why I would put this on top of Breaking Bad if, again, this show ends on a high note. And it's not that Breaking Bad necessarily has bad characters. I mean, Walt and Jesse will go down in history as some of the greatest, without question, greatest characters that have ever lived on a TV show. They are easily two of the best characters ever, and I would almost argue that Walt is one of the, if not the greatest character ever created. But it's more about the supporting cast when it comes to Better Call Saul, because, you know, again, we're dealing with god tier main characters in Breaking Bad, without question. And again, this isn't really a spoiler, but I'll leave you with 3 words. Kim, Nacho, Lalo. That's it. The characters, like, the story is amazing in Better Call Saul. The visuals and the cinematography and the music and all of that, as you would expect, is just absolutely spectacular. But again, when it comes to kind of the supporting cast, unmatched. Absolutely spectacular. But the one thing that really feel like the one unique thing about this show that I kind of grade it with a little bit of curve is the fact that it is a prequel. It is set in a world that already exists. The story is essentially handcuffed because you can't really go too far outside of the creativity because, again, this world exists in another world. Like, this world already exists in Breaking Bad, and there are characters that cross over, and you can't really change much. There's not a lot of, you don't really have a lot of liberty to just be like, oh, I'm going to have this character from this show do this now, because you can't. They already have traits and situations already very much established in Breaking Bad. And, you know, we've seen, you know, at least for me, my favorite content, it always comes back to Star Wars. My favorite content in the world is Star Wars. And even with the creator of Star Wars doing prequels after, like, the main content is created, there's still a lot of loopholes and a lot of story holes and gaps in the story, and like almost more questions raised than answers. It's really hard to do prequel content. It could be really, like, it is a massive challenge to not contradict a story or a character trait in a piece of prequel content, especially when you're dealing with a world like Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. It is just so insane, and again, it's part of what makes this show so good, because somehow, some way, it turns moments that you really shouldn't be that nervous about because, of course, no spoilers, nothing specific, but the idea that we know a character exists in that world is dealing with something that is so tense that you're actually really nervous and concerned for them. Like, how does that happen? And it's just absolute master storytelling. It is just fantastic acting. Everything about those moments are like, I shouldn't be worried in this moment, but the music, the acting, the delivery, the camera angles, the cinema, like everything about it just makes you absolutely want to freak out, and you're just scared. You get worried about it. It is just one of those things where that is a massive challenge to get the viewer to be on the edge of their seat, freaked out for a character that you already kind of know the outcome for. It's one of those things where I don't know how they do it exactly, because again, I feel like it's such a difficult thing, but the story up to this point in Better Call Saul has been airtight. It is so good. I cannot wait to see. There's still another season. We got to wrap up this final season, and then we'll really determine about where this show lands. But I still don't feel like this show gets what it deserves. The fact that it's a prequel and that its hands are tied with the story and the world that they're in, and somehow they managed to tell this absolutely incredible story. It's unbelievable, and I absolutely love Better Call Saul so much, and it 100% deserves to be on the same tier, in the same discussion as Breaking Bad. Of course, as long as they wrap up their season as well as I think that they're going to. It's going to be spectacular. Go watch Better Call Saul right now. Up next, we've got The Expanse, which is a show that, we were getting requests for this show for, I want to say, over a year, maybe even longer than that, before we even started watching this show. And the thing that is unique about The Expanse is that it's true to the science of space, which we're going to talk about. This was one of those shows that I really didn't know what I was kind of getting us into. I didn't really know what to expect. And it had some really high praise from the fans, calling it the Game of Thrones in space, which, again, Game of Thrones is my number one favorite show of all time. And that's a really high bar to set. And it's just one of those things where kind of an expectation was created, which could sometimes be a little dangerous. But I'm also kind of generally not a huge fan of space content. I'm not a massive sci-fi fan. I mean, the only space stuff that I really watch is Star Wars and Marvel. And it's just not a genre that I've really ever gotten into. But there is absolutely something special about The Expanse. And there's always something, when it comes to like requests, certain requests have never died down. They keep coming. People keep talking about it. Like Game of Thrones was a show that people wouldn't stop talking about. I was very resistant on it because I always, like, me and Nikki tried to watch it very early on. We got through like 1 or 2 episodes and then we stopped, and I thought it was kind of goofy or whatever. I didn't really know what it was. I had no idea. But it was one of those things where those requests kept coming and The Expanse requests kept coming. People kept talking about this show, and when that happens, generally the audience has been right almost 100% of the time with show requests like that. When things pop up in masses like they do with like they did with The Expanse, it's something that definitely puts it on your radar and you pay attention to it. I mean, there was even a Reddit post someone put out there asking to get the Expanse community to get us to watch The Expanse. It never really did that great in votes, but it was something that we just decided to watch because, again, so many requests, and it felt like something that was different and definitely something that was intriguing. And, thank you, Corey, for constantly talking about The Expanse because it's up there with one of my favorite shows of all time now. The really easy thing to kind of describe the show is like, wow. Like going into something, like the expectations were set by the comments and the people who love this show. But again, because it was about space and it was a sci-fi show, it blew me away because I still kind of took low expectations going into The Expanse. And it really does kind of fit the idea of Game of Thrones in space. The world building, the character building, the story building. It kind of, like, it works. It lines up. And you go and watch this show, you'll fully understand what I mean. Like, the politics in the show, just everything about it, it does very much line up to a Game of Thrones version show in space, which, again, it absolutely blew me away when we started watching it. It's very much like another show that we're going to talk about, the last one that we're going to talk about, where you really don't, it's like, oh, spaceships and flying, and I don't want to that's goofy content. Like I don't want to watch that, but it absolutely will blow you away. And it's one of those things where, again, the expectation going in is like, oh, it's a show about, it's so much bigger and so much more than just a show about space. It is just absolutely incredible, and it's been such a fun watch. Because this isn't Star Wars, this isn't Marvel. I'm not just gonna push a button and boom, ludicrous speed, here we go. And within a flash of your eye, we're in a new planet, in a new galaxy, flying around doing things. It doesn't work that way. The unique thing about this show and the creators, they really put a focus in the science and being true to the science of being in space. If a character is out in space, unprotected, you see the impact. You've got a character who might not be used to a, gravitational pull on the planet. You see the impact on them. You see how things operate when they're flying through space at ridiculous speeds. You see the impact on them. Just the maneuvers and the flying and just everything about this show. It's just like, oh shit, that's what it would be like if I actually was out there in space flying at that speed in a ship like that. Oh, damn. Okay, if I actually got spaced and I'm floating out in the middle of just zero gravity and all this stuff, that's what it would look like. That's how my body would react to it. It is part of the show that just makes it so absolutely incredible. And just the visuals, again, the storytelling, characters. There's a couple really dope characters in this show. One of them belongs on my dude shirt because he has become one of my dudes. Amos, you out there? Love you, bro. You're amazing. But it's such a good show when it comes to the world building, the dialogue, and again, it's not like watching Star Wars where you just pull a lever and boom, we're off to space and we're all just sitting there just nice and dandy and just chilling. It's some legit shit when things get heavy, and the twists and turns and the story is just that's something that really gets me in a lot of these shows. Is if you could surprise me, because I love, you've watched plenty of our content. If you haven't, if you're new, I absolutely love trying to guess and come up with theories and think about and trying to figure out where the story's going. I really appreciate it when a show could give me something that I never expected, and The Expanse gives you things that you won't necessarily ever expect. And I really appreciate that in the storytelling, and it's part of the reason why it's become one of my favorite shows of all time. It literally has everything. I mean, the characters, you want to scream for them, you want to cry for them, you want to hate them, you want to love them, you want to see some of those folks get spaced, just kicked out in the middle of space, and just be like, all right, bye, deuces, peace, have fun flying out and floating around. Just the disorientation too that they're able to do in certain spots is just absolutely amazing. And again, amazing story, cinematography, a lot of fighting, war, just crazy shit. And again, it all comes down to characters and story, and this show's got it. And this is another show that's going into its final season. I cannot wait to see how this show wraps up. And yeah, highly underrated. Go check out The Expanse. Whether you like space or you don't, I think everyone could kind of wrap their head around this show because, again, it is absolutely fantastic. And up next, we got Ozark. Again, just like, I'm just going to feel like a broken record talking about these shows. Amazing characters, amazing story, twists and turns and things that you don't necessarily see coming. And the thing that makes Ozark unique, in my opinion, is the ability to make almost every single moment, literally every moment in this show, feel tense. It's just like how it's one of those shows, and it may not be for everyone this type of feeling, but it's something that I could appreciate very much, especially watching with Nikki. It's one of those things where the most simple tasks in this show will get your heart rate pumping. Your heart rate will be at a peak level through an entire episode of this show. And I personally haven't watched many things. Like Breaking Bad is close to that level, but Ozark is just like a constant, instead of like, roller coasters build, this show is a constant, like you're just straight free falling through shit. And I think that's really awesome and unique to the storytelling. And again, very, very specific. Characters in this show are dope. The story is absolutely really intriguing. And just everything about it, the way it's filmed, the way it's shot, the way the story's told, the music in Ozark is absolutely spectacular. But again, we've got situations that we're dealing with here, And again, not going to give away anything specific because, again, you should definitely go watch this show. Ozark is definitely on the list of highly underrated shows. It is so good. It's not like a top 5 for me, but it's definitely going to be in my top 10 because, again, I think, ironically, these are all shows that are wrapping up. I think we're going into the last season of Ozark as well, which is kind of interesting because my opinions for all these shows can definitely change if they don't nail the landing on their... Which, again, is really hard to wrap up your finale and land perfectly and please all your viewers. It is a very difficult thing. It is so hard to stick the landing in wrapping up a series. A lot of shows fail at that. You could probably count on one hand how many shows have done an amazing job wrapping up their entire show. There's another thing that was interesting going into the show because Jason Bateman's the star of it, and all I really know of him is comedy. And knowing that we weren't getting a comedy with him in this, I thought it was going to be really interesting. Like, some of his comedy movies and content that I've seen of his, I love. I think the dude is absolutely hilarious. So it was one of those things, it was a really big question mark for me walking into Ozark and being like, all right, we're going to do something serious with Jason Bateman. Like, I had never seen anything serious with him before. I never really watched any of the dramas that he had been in before. And it is just, the moment the show starts... I'm sucked out of that moment. I 100%, like, the comedy, like, Ozark is what I know him for now. And when I watch other things that he's in, other, like, the comedy stuff, it's just like, oh yeah, he's a really funny dude too. Because you almost take the funny guy that we see in all this content, all the movies that he's in or shows that he's in, it's almost like that guy being inserted into a world where everything is really serious and there's a lot at stake. Because you can kind of still sense, like, because that's him. You know, that's Jason Bateman, I feel like. I feel like he'd be a really fun dude to hang around and kind of go have a drink with. But I didn't know what to expect with him being in this really serious role. And I got to tell you, it is amazing. He is absolutely spectacular. And I'm sorry I don't have the widest vocabulary in the world. I use a lot of the same things to describe this stuff. Amazing, incredible. He's dope. I didn't do well on the SATs when it comes to knowing a lot of elaborate words to describe how great something is. It's amazing. I think Ozark is absolutely amazing. And again, the thing that makes it so unique is just the ability to constantly keep you on edge during really simple moments, really simple, subtle, quiet discussions. The music in this show is everything. And it's just so good. Again, I really appreciate a show that could give me a lot of twists and turns. I really appreciate a show that can make my heart rate climb. You never know necessarily what you're expecting as things play out. It leaves you with a lot of just questionable things, and it's a very serious show. Like, this shit is serious, especially in the most recent season. There's some really serious shit that gets talked about and discussed in watching these characters live through these things. And yeah, Ozark is definitely one of those shows. Get caught up before the new season comes out. It is definitely one of my favorite things that I've ever seen. The characters, the story, everything about it is just so good. And again, it's not necessarily for everyone, just because that level of tenseness and just intensity overall from the show, it could really, really get you. Some of Nikki's biggest freakouts have happened in this show. They really push the limit. And they really ask a lot of their viewers to be able to sit through and sustain this high level of stress through these episodes. But it is amazing. I highly recommend it. Go check it out. And the last show on my list, which I believe up to this point is without question, no doubt, the most underrated show that we have ever seen, that I have ever seen. It is a show that is criminally underrated. People don't know about this show. People don't talk about Black Sails at all. And I think I understand why. I think there's a legitimate reason why. For the other shows, I don't really necessarily know why they might not get the pub or the discussion or the praise that they deserve. I mean, Better Call Saul being a spinoff of Breaking Bad, that could rub a lot of people the wrong way. I don't personally love spinoffs a lot. Generally, it's almost impossible to live up to the original content, especially when it's considered one of the best shows of all time. The Expanse is about space. I'm not really sure the whole reasoning behind Ozark, but Black Sails, I think I understand why. It's on Stars, which I'm not sure what the viewership numbers look like on Stars, but it's also a show that came out during peak Game of Thrones, which, if you're a similar show in the same type of genre as Game of Thrones, it's going to be really hard to get noticed. And Black Sails is one of those shows where it came out during the peak, and probably a lot of people weren't talking about it because they were watching one of the greatest things ever created. And, you know, the fact that Black Sails is about pirates, I think that's a lot. Just like The Expanse is a very niche thing with space and sci-fi, like Pirates, I feel like, is a very niche piece of content because it's like you immediately think of Pirates of the Caribbean. Yes, Pirates of the Caribbean, not Caribbean, Pirates of the Caribbean. But it's one of those things where you hear pirates and you're like, arg, I don't really want to watch that. That sounds cheesy and corny. And it literally is the farthest thing from the truth. And it is like serious shit. It's like legitimate serious shit. And if there's one show on this list that I think you need to go watch, it's Black Sails. Because the thing that makes this show unique is the writing. The writing. There are, again, the writing has impacts on the story and the characters. The writing in this show is like, recency bias is a thing, and it could be a possibility with my feelings for Black Sails because we're in the middle of it. We're just starting the final season. Again, another show where we have one season to watch. We'll see how it wraps up. But recency bias could be a thing. And watching Black Sails, I think 10 years from now, I don't think my opinion is going to change. This show, up to the point that we have watched all of this content, even dating back to stuff that I've watched previous to the reaction channel, Black Sails is the best written story, best written dialogue of anything I've ever seen ever. Not even an exaggeration. It is the best written show of all time that I have personally ever seen. I haven't seen everything, obviously. But it's one of those things where the writing has developed the story, it has developed these characters, and it's at a point now where the investment is Game of Thrones level investment. You are caring and loving and just being emotional for these characters. There could probably be 3 dudes from this show that belong on my dude shirt because of how amazing the development and the story and these characters and their there's dialogue in this show, and I feel bad for the other shows that we're watching alongside Black Sails because the dialogue, nothing is wasted ever. Every piece of dialogue, everything that is said in this show matters. It is on the level of nothing I've ever seen before, and it's just unbelievable. And then you watch other shows and there's just this dialogue, and it's like, does that even matter? Is that going to impact anything later? And the answer is probably no. And it's a really difficult thing watching such a premium piece of content around other pieces of content. Because again, the writing and the story is just absolutely spectacular. And you could even add into that the cinematography, the visuals. We're dealing with pirates. They're on ships on the ocean and they're fighting. There's war, there's battles, there's gore, there's just everything that you can think about pirates is in this show, but take out like the cheesiness of what you kind of might think when it comes to pirates. This shit is like Game of Thrones level seriousness when it comes to the pirate stuff. We're not dealing with characters. I mean, there's a couple characters that you kind of like, okay, yeah, pirates are kind of silly. But when you think of like pirates, this show nails what a pirate is. I don't know. It's just so hard to even talk about it because I want to give y'all specifics about why it's so good and what makes it so great, but I'm not going to do that because it is the number one show that I recommend you watch. I think it is the most underrated show that we have ever seen. And it's one of those things that, you know, those requests, it's got its hardcore following of fans because it is a prequel to a book series, I believe, the Treasure Island stuff, which I'm not too familiar with. There are real life characters in this show, real life pirates in this show. So there is some historical, you know, information in here. And overall, it's just the requests. And I'm like, pirates are like, we're going to watch a show about pirates and like pirates? We talking about pirates? It's just one of those things like The Expanse. I really didn't know what to get into. And it's one of those shows where, and I hate to say this about such an amazing show, but it's like the content doesn't bother me at all. There's a lot of world building and character building and setting things up in the first season where a lot of people call it kind of the prologue to the show. I don't really mind that kind of stuff at all. I love character and world building because it's setting the tone and it's building the story towards what we're going to get. If you get through the first season, which a lot of people have kind of complained about because, again, that's not for everyone. A lot of people just want to get to the kind of the meat and potatoes of the show and really get to what it's about. But the world building, like, I love it and I appreciate it. And I think it's really, really dope. And, you know, again, if you could get into season 2, the show will absolutely blow you away. And if it doesn't, I don't know what to say. It's legitimately the best written show that I've ever seen. And that is even comparing it to Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul that has an airtight prequel story that it's telling right now. It's just so well done. And so there's things that are said in this show that you want to put on a t-shirt. You want to walk around and go up to your friends and say blah, 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 blah. You want to say it to them because it's such an amazing line. And it's just something that will stick. Like, stuff in this show is going to stick with me forever. It is so awesome and is so good. And I appreciate really great stories and I really appreciate risk. And this show does take risks. I feel like there's a lot of risks with the characters and the way things play out. And again, a show that could keep you on your toes with the story and not make it predictable, I love that more than anything. There are things in this show that literally blew our minds. Literally blew our minds. There were multiple situations where it's just like, that's not really happening, that's not really happening, that's not, oh my God, that's where they're going with the story. Absolutely incredible. And there's just so much with character development and story development and just everything in this show. I couldn't speak any higher praise for this show. It is probably going to end up in my top 3 very soon. I don't know how I'm going to make room for all these shows in my top 5 because there's so many shows that I love. But the way Black Sails has hooked me between the character and the stories, like, it is just mind-blowing how good this show is. And between Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones and Better Call Saul and Mandalorian and Vikings and The Walking Dead and just all these shows that we've seen that we love and are great, Black Sails is better than all of them in terms of writing and storytelling. It's a show that I think knows exactly what it is because it's 4 seasons long. It didn't overextend itself. Obviously, we still need to find out because we still have 10 episodes to watch. But I get the vibe that if you're ending 4 seasons, that you probably know exactly what your story is. You know exactly how the story needs to end. And I think that's usually a good sign for, like, I think Breaking Bad's the same thing. It knew exactly how it needed to, and it wasn't like a 12-season show. It ended, it had its starting point, it knew where to end, and it wrapped up with the best ending of a show that I've personally ever seen. Black Sails feels like it's on that trajectory to where it knows what it is, it knows the story that it's telling, and we're going to get to that point. We're going to get from point A to point B through 4 seasons, and it's going to be good. I have so much faith, and it's going to be a massive letdown if the ending of Black Sails isn't great. But I feel like this show knows how to wrap up a show, and I think it's going to be really good. So again, the most underrated show does not get talked about nearly enough. I feel like nobody has seen this show. Black Sails deserves to be in the discussion of all the best shows on TV that have ever been created because, again, the acting, the stories, the writing, it's all flawless. The story is so good. It's entertaining. It's got fighting and it's got sex and it's got pirates. It's got all kinds of things that you could ever imagine that you would want in a story like this. And it's violent and it's got emotions. You want to cry. You want to scream. There's so much that plays into this show. And I hope I'm not hyping it up too much, but it's definitely something where currently right now it is one of my favorite shows that we have ever seen. And I just want everyone to watch it, not even for our reaction channel purposes. I want people to go experience this show because it's up there as some of the best content ever created. Whew! That was a lot. I could talk about these shows, specifically Black Sails, for hours, I feel like. Like, this show legitimately, like, blew me away. And it's just one of those things where I just want everyone to kind of get their eyes on it and check it out. So before we jump into the last part of the podcast for today, I did ask y'all over on Instagram, go follow us on Instagram, Nikki Steve React on Instagram. I did ask y'all over there, like, hey, what do you guys think is your number one most underrated show? And here's some of the stuff that y'all went through. I'm just going to rattle these off. Better Call Saul, yep. Peaky Blinders, Lost. I mean, Lost is considered one of the greatest shows of all time. I don't know if that's underrated. Black Sails, thank you very much. C on Apple TV. See You Again, okay. Mayor of Easttown, Hap and Leonard, Dark, Black Sails Again, The Last Man on Earth, Legion, Terror, Star Wars Rebels. That is an underrated show. If you're a Star Wars fan, you should definitely go check out Rebels. It is a really good show. Hannibal, The Middle, Glow, The Last Kingdom, something that we're going to watch at some point. Very excited for that. Another one from The Last Kingdom, The Expanse. Yep, totally agree. Years and Years, The Righteous Gemstone, Narcos, Westworld. A couple for Westworld. Barbarians, Fargo, Strangers from Hell. That sounds cool. The Expanse, Heroes, The Leftovers, The Punisher. Season 1 of The Punisher, 1,000,000%. Season 1 of The Punisher is such great television. Go check it out. Vikings. I don't know if Vikings is underrated. I think Vikings gets its proper due. Kingdom, Black Sails. Yep. Banshee, Dark, Mr. Robot. We hear a lot about Mr. Robot and how amazing it is. Maybe one day that could be a possibility. I don't know. We'll see. It is a show that I believe is wrapped up. Penny Dreadful, Ozark, yep, Friday Night Lights. Oh, I heard Friday Night Lights is really good. I heard that's a really good show. Justified, ER, Ozark, The Outsiders, The Last Kingdom, Stranger. I don't think Stranger Things is underrated. I think Stranger Things is properly rated. Really good show. Going into another season coming up here very shortly. The Wire. If you Googled greatest shows of all time, I'm pretty sure The Wire is listed at least in the top 3 of almost every single list of greatest shows of all time. I don't know. End of the Fucking World, Better Call Saul, Attack on Titan, Doctor Who, Peaky Blinders. Yeah, there's a long list of shows that people consider to be underrated. Share your thoughts, of course. You can find us on social media, or if you're watching this on YouTube, leave your comments below. What do you think are the most underrated shows that you've ever seen? And share why. I think it's really cool. What do you think about the shows that I picked? Have you seen all these shows? Have you not seen any of them? Would you consider watching them based off of what I said about them? But before we wrap things up, let's take a quick word from our sponsors, and then we'll jump into a quick Star Wars content.
Nikki and Steven are proudly sponsored by Madrina's Coffee. Madrina's Coffee, creating the world's best cold brew with all natural and better-for-you ingredients, providing energy to content creators and coffee heads worldwide. Grab yours today at madrinascoffee.com and use promo code STICKER for 20% off. Madrina's Coffee, fuel for the game, fuel for the grind, fuel for life.
You know, one thing I really love doing is setting expectations. I love going into a new show, a new movie, a new season, a sequel, a prequel. Regardless of what it is, I love making theories. I love watching theories. I love coming up with guesses. I love trying to predict where the story is going. I am a huge fan of coming up with ideas and having hopes and wants for a future piece of content. And when it's done right, I really feel like setting certain expectations or building a desire or want list of something that you want to see in an upcoming piece of content could be a lot of fun. You obviously can't take it overly serious and set your expectations too high to completely expect something to play out, because all you're doing is setting yourself up for heartbreak and sadness and anger and whatever other emotions that you want to tie into not seeing something that you want to see play out the way you want it to play out. But there's one thing in the upcoming Kenobi series that's coming up here, the Star Wars show with Obi-Wan. Cannot wait for that. That has always kind of been one of my more anticipated pieces of content, whether we got the movie or a show. Just there's so much storytelling that I feel like we could get with Obi-Wan that I just can't wait to see it. But there is one thing that I really need to see, and it all stems from one very specific sequence. For a long time now, I've considered Return of the Jedi as my personal favorite Star Wars movie. There's just so many emotions tied to it. There's so many things with validations and redemptions and just the storytelling from start to finish and just kind of wrapping up that trilogy that I just absolutely love Return of the Jedi. I think Empire Strikes Back is the best movie, but my personal favorite is Return of the Jedi. There is one very specific scene, even more specifically one line in that movie, that always gets me. I am so interested in learning more and kind of having this line pay off.
I know there is good in you. The Emperor hasn't driven it from you fully. Come with me.
Obi-Wan once thought as you do.
When? When exactly did Obi-Wan think as Luke did? At what point did Obi-Wan ever try to officially convince Vader, join me, come back to the light. And when would Vader have known about it? Because of his response, Obi-Wan once thought as you did. Obviously something went down.
You have allowed this Dark Lord to twist your mind until now you have become the very thing you swore to destroy.
If you're not with me, then you're my enemy.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes. I will do what I must.
It definitely wasn't that. Obi-Wan knew exactly what he needed to do when he boarded the ship to go over to Mustafar with Padme. There was absolutely nothing in my eyes that made me think, oh yeah, Obi-Wan's trying to turn him. They were having a conversation and there was some discussion, but at no point did Obi-Wan ever try to convince him, like, no, come back with me. Come back to the light. This is a problem. This is like, he says it's wrong, but he knew right away with the way Anakin was acting, something had to be done. And it wasn't joining him and coming back to the light.
You can't win, Darth. If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
And without a doubt, it wasn't that moment either. There was absolutely no conversation with Obi-Wan trying to turn Vader. It was a fight. Obi-Wan again knew exactly what needed to be done. Strike me down, I'll become more powerful than you could ever imagine. Now, we know that Hayden Christensen is going to be in the Obi-Wan series, and we know that there's going to be an interaction or fight between Obi-Wan and Vader or Anakin. And I am 100% convinced. I'm expecting it. Again, I'm not going to get my hopes up crazy, but I fully believe that line and that moment from Return of the Jedi is going to get a full payoff here. We're going to get the moment that Darth Vader was referring to when he told Luke, Obi-Wan once thought as you did. And because of this...
I have failed you, Anakin. I have failed you.
And this...
There's good in him. I know there's still...
I fully believe that Obi-Wan is going to be sickened. He's going to be haunted at the idea that his brother...
You were my brother, Anakin. I loved you.
...turned to Darth Vader, joined the Sith, executed I don't even know how many Jedi, and he feels like he failed. I can totally see Obi-Wan finding a way to seek out Anakin, Vader, to try to have one last attempt to bring him back to the light, back to the good side, because Padme mentioned it. He knows that there's something there, and he's just going to feel, I feel like there's going to be a lot of guilt. There's going to be a lot of haunting at just the idea of how everything played out. And I mean, obviously it's going to be one of those stories where we know how it ends, but again, with the proper storytelling, that could be fantastic, and I have full confidence with the folks that are involved with this and that are running it. It's going to be awesome, and it's going to be one of the best things that Star Wars has put out in the last few years, without question. Not only will another fight and even conversation between Obi-Wan and Vader give some clarity to the Obi-Wan once thought as you did line, but it will also give more clarity to the moment and relationship, and it will even possibly connect other moments.
There is still good in him.
He's more machine now than man, twisted and evil.
That, and also this.
Your powers are weak, old man. You should not have come back.
It makes me giddy with excitement at the idea of another Obi-Wan and Anakin interaction, because I truly feel like, again, like I mentioned with the people involved, it's going to be good. It could be some of the best Star Wars we've ever seen. Some things are better left unspoken and unexplained, but I feel like this is one of those story gaps that they're going to fill, and it's going to just be spectacular. I think it's going to be so well done. I think it's going to be so entertaining, and it's going to be so emotional, which is what makes Star Wars so great, in my opinion, especially for me at this point. The emotions that it brings out of people, regardless of what end of the spectrum the emotion's on, it's just all about the emotion, and I feel like that moment done right is going to be so emotional. And while we're here talking about things that we want to see or expectations for an upcoming show...
In your solitude on Tatooine, training I have for you. An old friend has learned the path to immortality. One who has returned from the netherworld of the Force, your old master.
Qui-Gon.
How to commune with him, I will teach you.
Can we please get Liam Neeson back as Qui-Gon Jinn? Please. For some reason, every single time when I'm watching Revenge of the Sith and Obi-Wan sits down with Yoda to talk about the future and Yoda brings up the idea of being able to communicate with your master again, it gives me all the feels. It gives me chills. I don't know what it is about that moment, but it's just like, oh my God, I get to see my master. Like, that is such a touching moment, and I love that scene every single time. And anytime there's been an an idea or talks about an Obi-Wan show, that is one of the things that I would love to see play out. I would love to see Yoda interacting with Obi-Wan, teaching him how to communicate with Qui-Gon. That would be so dope, and I would be all for it. And it's probably like the second thing on my list in terms of expectations of stuff that I want to see in this Obi-Wan show, because there is like that time gap, there's a lot to play with, and they have set up certain things to tell that story and to continue that story. And just the idea of seeing Liam Neeson again as Qui-Gon, that would be so cool. And just getting, we still haven't really gotten a lot of like the crossover. We've gotten conversations, but the idea of even seeing Qui-Gon trying to learn and communicate with Obi-Wan and Yoda, like that stuff would be so cool to see, and I hope we get it. Overall, like I mentioned, the moment these Star Wars stories started playing out and these shows started kind of blowing up, the Obi-Wan story is the one that I've always wanted the most. It was always at the top of my list. I think a lot of people agree that the Obi-Wan series with Ewan McGregor, he is so good as Obi-Wan, and I'm just so excited for this show. Regardless of whether they do any of the stuff that I talked about or the stuff that I want, I am fully confident that it's going to be good. It's going to be entertaining. It's going to be really well done. And I feel like we're going to be able to fill some gaps that a lot of us Star Wars fans have been wanting to see told for a long time. It's going to be a really good story. And I just hope we get some closure on that line from Return of the Jedi, because it is always just one of those things. Every time I watch that movie, I'm always curious, like, when did that interaction take place? I want to see it. I want to see the last effort of Obi-Wan trying to convince his brother Anakin, Darth Vader, to come back to the light. What you're doing is wrong. Come back to us. We could still make this work. I want to see that interaction so badly, and I hope we get it for everyone, because it is one of those moments that I think, again, is going to be one of the greatest moments in Star Wars. There's like a small list of things that we want to see. I feel like getting to see Luke be super OP, we got that in The Mandalorian. Seeing Vader just completely wreck Rebels and just go ham and just be Vader that we know that he could be. And I feel like another interaction between Obi-Wan and Vader is just one of those things that you could just check it off the list, and I think it's going to be absolutely spectacular. I cannot wait to see it play out, because again, there's so much possibility for what can be told in that time range, and I'm all for it. I cannot wait. That was a little something that I created for the Star Wars channel that I was trying to build, which I've kind of stopped doing content for. But yeah, I feel like Kenobi's going to be a spectacular show, and I can't wait for it. Yeah, it's just definitely something that I'm really anticipating, really excited for. Of course, share your thoughts on what your expectations are for the Kenobi series. And that's going to wrap up another podcast. I had a blast today talking about these shows. If you ever have any suggestions or thoughts or ideas for me, share along. And if you have anything specific for Nikki, please ask away. I want to get her involved. I will find creative ways to get her involved in this show. I record this during the day. I'm free during the day. She's a little busier during the day. But yeah, I want to find unique ways to get her involved. If you have any specific questions, or if you want she loves giving advice to y'all. So if you've got anything that you want some advice on, let us know in the comments, or you can hit us up on social media. You can join our Discord. Discord is the best place to join. It is our center hub for everything that we do. Links to all that stuff in the comments below or wherever this is posted. I really appreciate y'all living. I do really appreciate y'all living. I really appreciate you guys for listening. That's what I meant to say. But yeah, I appreciate you guys for living, because if you weren't living, you couldn't listen or watch. So yeah, I appreciate all y'all very, very much. And again, join the conversation. Hit us up. We'd love to hear from you. Hope you guys have a good one. And I'm signing out solo. Peace out.